Hello, everyone. My name is Dan. Thanks for tuning in today. You know, one of the first things that I say whenever I see maybe a video clip of a group from the 70s or some great movie from the 70s, it tends to be something like this: God, how I miss the 70s. That's what comes out of my mouth. And, there's probably a country song I could make about this if I say that I'm in love with a time and place that I'll never see again. I mean, that sounds like a line from a country song, doesn't it? And, I'm not just being sentimental about the days of my youth. It goes beyond that. When I compare living then with living now, I think I would just about chuck all of today's technology and just go back there and live. And if I could bargain in the afterlife, I would say, yeah, the pearly gates sound nice and the streets of gold sound nice, but you know what I'd really like is to just keep reliving 77, 78, and 79. That would be my heaven. And if I could make that pitch, I would. I don't know how far it would go, but at least I would try, because those were really some special times. The things in particular that I miss are the vehicles, the cars. I miss the music, and I miss the natural beauty of women back then. And then by extension, the guys also, we had kind of a rugged individualism, and most of us were, we were more fit, more athletic, and we were allowed to have a sense of rugged individualism. And I really miss that. And that's not necessarily an object that I miss, like a car or a musical group or, one of my favorite women from the 70s. It's more of a principle that I miss, that rugged individualism was okay. And it was okay for people to admire men. Men don't get admiration today. It just seems like everything has been so feminized. A lot of people use the term woke. But things have become so feminized that we just frown on men being individuals, and we just don't look up to that anymore, and that's sad. Back in the late 70s, heck, I had guys like John Wayne, Clint Eastwood, James Coburn, and Steve McQueen to look up to. And man, you talk about masculinity and toughness and being the strong, silent type that could get things done. Those guys really exhibited it. And especially the Dirty Harry movies, this was a character that was often chided and rebuked for not being part of a team. And he was a character that was willing to do whatever it would take to get the job done. And if he had to do it on his own, he would do it on his own. And we just don't have any Dirty Harrys today. We're not allowed to have them. And that's too bad. And back in the late 70s, guys, they had it. They had this coolness quotient. And I think Steve McQueen at one time was called the king of cool. And I don't know, for some reason we've just lost that, and everything's become so feminized. And you watch a lot of shows and movies today, and it's like it's not about an individual, especially about a guy. He can't solve anything on his own. He has to be part of a team, and that team has to be multicultural and multigender. And that's okay sometimes, but I really miss the early Mad Max, the Dirty Harry, the Bullet, Steve McQueen Bullet character, and I miss the guys that played them. I like looking up to those guys, and I miss that individualism. And if you look in car magazines of the day, you'd often see an advertisement for Camel cigarettes, and I'm not telling anybody to start smoking Camels, but in those advertisements, you had a guy that was athletic looking, fit, physically fit, active outdoors. He'd be doing something like riding a motorcycle or kayaking or hang gliding or something like that. That was popular in the 70s, hang gliding. But in that ad, you had that guy featured, and then off to the side or just in the background, there'd be this girl that was admiring the guy, right? I mean, the guy was the focus of the ad. And there'd always be a girl admiring him, kind of like, girls admiring James Bond or somebody. And but we don't have that much in advertisements anymore. And back then we had different categories of vehicles. And today everything is just a big four-door shoebox. But back then we had categories, and especially sports cars. And that's what I miss about the '70s is the sport vehicles, the sport cars. And you have sport utility today, but there's not much sport in them. But back then, the station wagon was the family vehicle. The four-door sedan was Grandpa's car. And the rest of us just drove two-door coupes. And if you were on a budget, you drove a Maverick or a Nova or something like that. But if you moved upscale a little bit, you had the personal luxury vehicle like a Chrysler Cordoba, an Olds Cutlass, or a Pontiac Grand Prix. That really said something about you. Those two-door luxury coupes. You could also get a Ford Thunderbird if you wanted something bigger. The cars were, I think, nicer to look at. Today, yeah, the engines run better because we've made great advances in electronic engine controls. But as far as the cars being more attractive, they're just not attractive to me. I can't think of any new car that I would want to buy. And I've never had a car in the last 10 or 15 years that I don't have anymore that I say, gee, I wish I had that back. But there are a couple cars that I had back in the '70s that I wish I had back. One of them was a '74 Firebird Formula. That was a hot little car, and had a 350 Pontiac motor that was slightly modified, had a 4-speed transmission with a Hurst shifter, and it was a hot little car. And then I had a '71 Cougar that I wish I had back. But I don't say that about later model cars that I've had. It's always the '70s cars, and I don't know, they were just nicer to look at. They were easier to work on also, and easier to maintain, I think. And they were just more fun to drive. And a lot of people make fun of the '70s because they had these, big, inefficient cars. But look at what people are driving today. They're not driving smaller, more efficient cars. They're driving big vehicles today. Then, like I said, I miss the natural beauty of the women back then. And today, these gals, they pack so much, whatever, silicone, cellulite, or whatever, into their backsides and their thighs, and they start looking like hippopotamuses, for God's sakes. And they think it's hot. It's not that hot. Good Lord. Then they have plastic surgery on their faces, and they turn up the corners of their mouths, and they start looking like the Joker. That's hot? No, it's not hot. But the women, I think back then, were much more of a natural beauty. And, you had Raquel Welch and some of the others. But the two that I thought were the most beautiful was, first of all, Sophia Loren, the Italian bombshell. And, she was kind of full-figured, but she didn't have to add anything. She was just naturally curvaceous. And she was quite beautiful. But the epitome, to me, was probably Linda Carter. And, she was just ideal. And I think one magazine or something named her the most beautiful woman of 1978 or 1979, something like that. And she probably deserved it. And, all the proportions were there. She had curves, but they weren't exaggerated. And, she had the hair and the eyes and the makeup and everything was just, just perfect, just the way God intended. So, that's another reason I love the '70s. But, I got to get to the music, though. And a lot of people make fun of the '70s, the late '70s especially, because of disco. But I'm going to tell you right now, I would rather listen to disco music than listen to rap any day. Seriously. But, back in the late '70s especially, we had different genres of music. It wasn't all just, homogeneous like it is today. The country music was great. And the pop music was great. The rock music was great. And you could get as hard as you wanted to with the rock. I mean, I just watched a concert by Black Sabbath from the early '70s, and I thought, man, that was great. Man, these guys were really skilled on their instruments. I mean, really skilled. And it was just phenomenal to watch it. And today, everybody uses electronics to cover everything up. But back then, man, you had to be good to get a record. because the record companies wouldn't let you waste studio time. So if you didn't have your act together and you didn't have any talent, forget it. But the music back then, I think, was a lot better. And, people, I think, were better singers and definitely better musicians overall, skillful on instruments and so on. And like I said, they just didn't have a lot of electronic stuff to cover it up. We did get into it in the late 70s, some electronic sounds, but it was just kind of complementary, not dominating like it is today. And we had some really fantastic singers. One of the male singers I remember from the 70s is Lou Rawls. I mean, my God, what a great voice that he had. And then some of the female voices, like Donna Summer. And, she could really belt it out, but she didn't sound like she was yelling. Her voice still had that quality, even at that higher volume. And just people today just don't have that ability, at least not from what I've heard. And, a lot of people sound like they're yelling. Even when they're on key, they just sound like, I don't know, like they're off tune or off key somehow. It's just not very attractive. But we had some really good singers back then. Today, everything is just enhanced, and it's fake and it's phony, and you can tell it. And some of the sounds today are just so cartoonish and childish. It just starts sounding like nails on a blackboard after a while. But honestly, back in the 70s, people were very much more pleasant to listen to and awe-inspiring. And I remember when I was, 13 or 14, and I heard Boston's album for the first time. And that got me. I thought, my God, this is music brought down to us from an intelligent life form from another planet. It's like, that's how good it sounded. And today, it is still revered. I mean, there's nothing like it. And they did that in the 1970s, 1976, for God's sakes. And there's been nothing like it since. And that's what I mean when I say the music was better then. There's just nothing like it. And a lot of people make fun of disco. And there were a few corny acts here and there towards the end. But honestly, there were some really good groups in the 70s in the disco genre. And I remember, especially Heat Wave, Sister Sledge. The Bee Gees were there. But honestly, the disco scene wasn't all about the Bee Gees. There were some really good acts. And the one that I thought was the classiest act of all, the classiest group that I've ever heard, regardless of genre, was Chic. And you look at one of their albums, and they're dressed just so elegantly and classy. Their music reflected that, and they brought a lot of sounds together, and just made it all coordinate so well. And they had a song called "I Want Your Love," and it's kind of sexy and sensual without being lewd in any way. And that's what we were able to do in the 70s. We had a lot of music about just the longing of men and women wanting to be together. And it didn't have to be raunchy. But we were able to pull that off. And I think the music had some sensuality about it back then. And today, it just doesn't have that quality. So that's what I miss, about the music from the 70s. And, like I say, a lot of people make fun of disco and they chopped it off at the knees after just 4 or 5 years. But I'd rather listen to disco than rap any day. I wish rap would just go away and die a very quick and violent death. But for some reason, it's like the Energizer Bunny. It just keeps hanging around, and I wish it would just go away. But my escape would be just to go back to the 70s and get away from it. And I know there were a lot of bad things going on in the late 70s. You had the Iran hostage crisis and many other things going on. So it's not like the world was perfect back then. But I think by the time we got to the late 70s, we just decided we were going to have a good time, regardless of what was going on in the world. And I think the music reflected that. But there were other things that I missed too. And like I said, it's the vehicles, the way we dressed and cared for ourselves. And we would never go out in public in the 70s the way I see people going out in public today. And I saw somebody in the doctor's office the other day. She came in and she had a double wide backside, if you know what I mean. She had some kind of pajama pants on and a big old sloppy t-shirt coming into the doctor's office. And of course she was wagging her phone around. And I thought, man, I don't do that today, but especially back in the 70s, nobody would go out looking like that. Nobody would. And that's what I miss about the 70s. Things were just different. So thanks for letting me reminisce about this. And, maybe I'll make another video about this if you guys want to hear more about my personal experience in the 70s. But in general, those are the things I miss. And that's what makes me so fond about that time in which I lived. And I wish I could take people back to that time and just let them experience it. I think if they experienced it for themselves, they would say, yeah, it was a lot different and maybe a lot better. And maybe we could just chuck all this technology and just go back there and live in a simpler, more real time. And today is just such a phony world that we live in. Back then, it was a little more real, maybe a lot more real, and that's what I miss about it. So thanks for letting me, again, reminisce about why I love the 70s. And once again, my name is Dan, and I'll talk to you in another video.